Okay. All these weather changes and my instrument is having a rough time. So I thought, well, we wait for everybody to join us. I would tune real quick. All right. There we go. Now we're cooking. All right. So everybody who's here, if you want to say hello in the chat box so I can see who's here. And the weather last week obviously prevented us from recording last week. So we missed a week, but today we're doing episode 4, Finger Patterns, part 2. And of course I left my notes with my in the other room. So we're going to try and remember everything that I was going to talk about today. So let's see. And now I'm drawing a blank. Well, welcome, everybody. I'm Miss Mandy with Upstate Suzuki Academy, and this is Viola Talks. It is a live show about the viola, what it means to play the viola, what's different on the viola compared to the violin, and sometimes even the cello, because we do have some similarities with the cello. So we'll talk about those things. If you're a beginner, welcome, and I hope that you learned something today. We talk about things that apply to people from all ages and all stages of learning. If you are an intermediate player or if you're coming back to playing, please use these exercises as a way to get back into playing. I try to present some exercises for all of the techniques that I talk about each week. So this week, the last few episodes and moving forward, we've been talking about, we started with posture, and then we were talking about left hand shape and positions. Now we're talking about finger patterns. And over the next few weeks, we'll go into what finger patterns have to do with shifting, and we'll go through one position at a time. So we'll talk about just one position at a time. And then we're probably going to go into some music theory stuff and what finger patterns have to do with scales and key signatures. So we'll get you applying these finger pattern ideas right away. And one of the reasons why I think finger patterns are so important is because when you can recognize those finger patterns in your music, it makes you a faster sight reader. It makes you a more confident player. Once you start to associate the finger patterns with the key signatures, when you see a key signature for some music, you know where your fingers need to go every time. So just some little tricks and things that I've learned along the way in my decades of playing the viola. So let's start with some announcements. First of all, we were slightly affected by Hurricane Helene, and we had no power for quite a few days and no internet. So I was not able to finish making the membership feature on my website live. I promised in the email that I was going to announce the new live date for that. So we are looking at October 20th for the new live date for the membership feature. But if you have a chance to take a look at my website, we do have some blog posts about composers. I try to feature a composer of the month every month. We have some articles about getting started on the instrument, but we also have a subscription for the email newsletter with practice tips and hints. When you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll get a free practice checklist emailed to your inbox. So there's that. I do also have a Facebook page, facebook.com/Upstate Suzuki Academy. And if you get a chance, go on over there and follow. Now, I will be honest, I have not posted anything on there recently, but I will be updating that in the next week or so. And I'll be doing some updates for the posting, notices about the videos and blog updates and all kinds of things there. I have also done practice challenges and video challenges in the past with my students when I had a really active studio years ago. Before COVID. I mean, it really was a long time ago. But these are also neat features that Facebook lets us do. It helps us make a community when you only see your teacher 30 minutes every week, but your teacher has other students. So it's a great way for families to connect. I actually had a couple of families that didn't know they were both seeing me until somebody had to reschedule, and they bumped into each other in my doorway on their way in and out, and they reconnected that way. So Facebook lets us make a community for our studio. So anyway, I think that covered everything. I'm talking really fast because I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. All right, so let's review what we've done before. So we talked about, and my finger tapes came off with the storm. I did not have a chance to put new ones on, so we'll see what we can do without the finger tapes. But it's a good thing to know how the finger patterns sound as well. So we're going to go by ear today. So we have our original finger pattern, or sometimes what I call our home finger pattern, with the 2-3 finger pattern, right? So our second and third finger are where the half step are, and we have the whole step between the first and second, and whole step between third and fourth. So it's going to sound like this. Okay, my string is flat again. Sorry, give me a second. So then after the 2-3 finger pattern, the next one we learned was the 1-2 finger pattern, right? So we had our low second finger is what we call that. So there's a half step now between the first and second finger, and a whole step to the third finger, and then a whole step to the fourth finger. So that would sound like this. Now, when I'm playing that on the violin, the fingerboard is small enough that I can keep all of my fingers down. On the viola, though, I usually have to rock a little bit, lift up my lower finger so that my fourth finger can reach. But you do want to practice having a nice, firm fourth finger reach. Now, I will say I was already a very strong violin player when I switched to viola, so I had a lot of techniques that I did not have to start from scratch on the viola. And one of those is independent fingers. So independent fingers is when we leave just one finger at a time on the fingerboard. That allows us to do things like shifting or vibrato. And we did talk about that a second ago. So when you're just starting out and you're learning these finger patterns, you do want to block your fingers as much as possible, but you also want to make sure you have good intonation. So if that means you have to lift up, a finger you're not using so that you can reach with the fourth finger, go ahead and do that. All right. You just want to make sure that if you're doing that, you only lift one finger, right? So if I'm trying to reach my fourth finger, I lift my first finger here. And then when I lift my first finger, I put my first finger back. I'm sorry, lift my fourth finger, put my first finger back. All right. So you want to make sure that you're staying anchored when you're practicing these finger patterns in a block with the block technique. Okay. All right. So we had our first finger pattern, the 2-3. Then we had the 1-2. Then we learned the 3-4. All right. The third finger pattern. So those are the three most commonly used finger patterns. So we have a whole step between the first and second finger. Then the second and third finger is a whole step, and then a half step to the fourth finger note. All right. So it would sound like this. All right. Then we talked about how sometimes we might do that in the gutter, is what I called it. We're going to start with the first finger to next to the nut, which is a half step from the open string. So that would give us a little bit different sound. And I called it in the gutter because only the third finger was the one left on the finger tape when we have everything low. All those, the first, second, and fourth finger are all off of their tapes. So here's the regular 3-4 finger pattern. And now here's in the gutter. Okay, so those are my names for them, and other teachers are going to have other names for them. All right, so let's talk about, I think I mentioned way at the very beginning that there are 6 pretty much known finger patterns that are common for violin and viola players. So 1, 2, and 3 being taught in the same order for every method book that I've read. I think I have 8 different method books in my bookcase here. So 1, 2, and 3 are pretty much always taught in that order. 4, 5, and 6, on the other hand, there seems to be some disagreement as far as what they are and also what order to teach them. All right. So we're going to go over a bunch of different little things. I think I have a total of like 4 or 5 different little combinations here. So bear with me. I know that the 4th one is going to be a whole step in between all 4 fingers. All right. So we call that the open finger pattern. And that's a little challenging. That's difficult, but let's give it a try. So on the D string, we play D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. And that's a very contemporary combination. I know I've used it in musical scores before. Kind of sounds like some mysterious walking music. There are some key signatures that will have you playing in that pattern. For example, if I'm playing, now we wouldn't necessarily play with the open. Let's see. And we could have an accidental and play the open string, but you might play D sharp and then go to E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. All right, so we started with a first finger in the gutter and then moved our hand up to the first finger and then used the 4th finger because that's less effort than hopping over to that A string and playing the low 1. So as opposed to now, if you wanted to bring out that A sharp, you could certainly stay in that half position that we haven't really given a lot of detail to. But if we were doing that in the half position, then we would be using the 1, 2 finger pattern. I play D sharp with my first finger, E with my second finger, a whole step to the F sharp, whole step to G sharp, and then over to the A string with A sharp. Sorry, too low. Okay. But if you wanted the tone to stay the same, you could certainly just do that half step shift. So start with the D sharp, shift to first position. All right. So I have had things like that. All right. So that's the open finger pattern. Sorry, I keep forgetting which way to turn my hand here. All right. So we have a whole step in between each pair of fingers. Now, with that said, we also have this one. I might call it a split finger pattern, maybe, or you wouldn't want to call it the 1, 2, 3, 4. But we have a half step between the first and second fingers, and then a half step between the third and fourth fingers. And if you notice, my finger spread here is actually wider than what we had for a whole step before. So there may be occasion when you have the half step between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 with just a whole step in between the second and third fingers. But I think what would be more common is to have a step and a half, so 3 half steps in between those fingers. So let's see, it would sound like D, E, F sharp, I'm sorry, F natural, G sharp, A, G sharp, F natural, E, D. All right, so that's kind of the sound a harmonic minor scale will give us in the last 4 notes. So that one's not quite so hard to practice. Almost sounds like Aladdin's flying carpet there. A little bit of an Egyptian twist to it. Let me grab my notes real quick here. Oops. Oof. All right. Tripped on the chair. So I just want to make sure I catch all the finger patterns that I wanted to talk about. All right, so that's 4 and 5. All right, so Remember, the fourth one is with the with what we call the open finger pattern, where you have a whole step in between each pair. And then the V finger pattern, I suppose we could call it, where you have the split. Oh, sorry, grabbed the wrong book. All right, where you have the half step between 1 and 2, and then a step and a half between 2 and 3. Now, if I only did a step between 2 and 3, it would sound like this. Okay, that's a little weirder, not very musical, but it might happen. It might happen. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at one of the, let's see. I'm trying to decide which one I want to do. So we might also occasionally have an accidental, for example, that would make us have to do like the 1-2 finger pattern. And then instead of a whole step, we have to do a step and a half. All right, so that would typically happen in a piece that's minor or something with a lot of accidentals. So let's look at that again. On the D string, we would play D, E, F, G, and then A sharp or B flat. Okay. We might even see that with our fingers and with our first finger in the gutter, starting with E flat. So D, E flat, and then E natural with the second finger for the half step. Whole step from there to F sharp, step and a half to A. All right. So again, we get kind of some funky sounds when we start to throw that step and a half in there. Let's see. So another one that we might run into is that same finger pattern we just talked about, but with the 2-3. All right, so the half step, instead of being between 1 and 2, the half step is between 2 and 3. So we might have D, E, F sharp, G, and then A sharp or B flat. And that one is probably more common, just listening to how those notes are spaced. So again, kind of an exotic Asian Egyptian sound going on there. All right. Good. So we're kind of throwing a lot of things out there right now. Like I said, these finger patterns are kind of more not as frequently used as the first 3 or 4 or even 5. All right. So these are some twists on the pattern. Now, something that we'll get into when we're talking about the finger patterns is that some of these patterns are going to be more common in the shifted positions because you won't have the open string in the equation there. And let me show you what I mean about that. All right, so again, we're still working on the D string. So if I'm doing a finger pattern exercise, let's say just our home finger pattern, 2 and 3. All right, so I have actually 5 notes that I'm dealing with. D, E, F sharp, G, A. All right, so now let's say I'm going to practice that same finger pattern in 3rd position. And again, we're going to go over this in detail with all the finger patterns and all the positions. But I want you to start thinking about it while you're practicing, especially if you're new to shifting. All right, so now I'm in 3rd position. My first finger is on the G. All right, and if I'm using that finger pattern, keeping my 2, 3 together, I don't have the open D in the equation. All right, my first note is going to be G with the first finger. So G and a whole step to A. Now a half step away from that is going to be B flat. And then a whole step to C. And then back down. So that's my finger pattern exercise over there. So if I am going to do, let's see, I'm going to do 2-octave G major scale. All right. And this is the neat part about how everything fits together. So the key of G, we have 1 sharp, and the first sharp is always F sharp. So when you have 1 sharp, it's going to be F sharp. So that means anytime I'm going to play a note that's not F sharp, I want to play the natural version. And if I'm going to play an F, I want it to be sharp. All right. So let's think about what that means. We start on G because it's the G scale, right? And then A is here. B, C, then D, E. Now the next letter in the alphabet is F, and we know our Fs have to be sharp. So that means that we have to play F sharp, which is our high second finger, and then G. All right, now I want to keep going and do a second octave. So I'm going to shift and put my first finger on G. Now I want A. So remember, in first position on the G string and the D string, we used our 2-3 finger pattern. So now I've shifted and I'm in third position with G, A, whole step to B. C is only a half step away, so that's going to be my 3-4 finger pattern. And I ran out of fingers, so now I'm going to hop over to the next string. Staying in the same position, I'm going to move my first finger over to A for D, E, and now I need F sharp, which is a whole step away from E. So I'm still in my 3-4 finger pattern. All right, and then go back down. And now I shift back to first position, and I'm back to my 2-3 finger pattern. Okay, now to stretch that idea a little bit further, and remember, this is just a preview of some of the things we're going to get into detail over the next few weeks, but to stretch that example a little bit further, if I'm playing in the key of G on my C string, am I going to use the 2-3 finger pattern? All right, let's think through that for a second. Now remember, on the G string, my 2-3 finger pattern, I had open, first finger, whole step to the second finger for B, half step to the third finger for C. All right, so that's what my open finger pattern is like. Now, if I go to the C string, I'm playing C. Now, this isn't part of the scale, but we might have notes on the C string in the key of G, okay? Especially because we play harmony and back up the melody all the time. So I'm going to start on C. Okay, that's in the key signature, so that one's fine. And then my first finger goes to D. That's in the key signature, so we're good. Second finger is E. That's good. Now, if I'm keeping that same finger pattern, my third finger is going to give me F, which is not in the key signature of G. We need F sharp, so we're going to have to do a different finger pattern. We stretch the third finger for F sharp, and then G is a half step away. All right, so our finger pattern on the C string in the key of G is different than the finger pattern on the G string. All right, so in the key of G, we play C, D, E, F sharp, G, and back down. All right, so we covered the G string and the D string. Now, if I didn't shift and I wanted to play more in the key of G on the A string, let's think about if I would still use my 2-3 finger pattern. So on the A string, we have A, B. Now, normally in the 2-3 finger pattern, my second finger lands on C sharp, but that's not allowed in the G major key signature, right? That's against the rules. So we have to play C natural, which means now we're going to do a 1-2 finger pattern on the A string. All right, so that's how my A string stays in the key of G. All right, so more on that to come. Like I said, I know I gave you a ton of stuff today, and I didn't really give you any specific exercises to practice because most of these are really advanced techniques that only apply in advanced situations. You can still practice that that finger pattern number 4, the open finger pattern, where you have a whole step between all 4 using the same exercises as last week. And you can also practice the V finger pattern using the same exercises. But the other ones you don't really have to practice because those typically come up circumstantially, meaning, you know, only with the circumstance of the piece that you're playing, not really something you would run into on a regular basis. So as long as you're practicing your music as it comes up, you should be able to pick up those other finger patterns. All right, so don't forget to like and subscribe. I love getting a higher count on my followers here. It's so exciting. But if you subscribe, you'll get notified of new videos, of course. And head on over to my website, upstatesuzukiacademy.com. Make sure to subscribe to the email list. And I'm going to be I send out practice tips every week on Saturday. Just ideas and games for keeping practice fresh and exciting every week. And don't forget to like and follow on Facebook. And that is facebook.com/Upstate Suzuki Academy. You should see my logo there. So I've pretty much kept everything uniform. And feel free to email me any tips or questions or anything like that. The biggest announcement, I completely forgot. I apologize. I had an opportunity come up in the next couple of weeks to perform locally, which unfortunately means we have rehearsal on the next 2 Tuesdays. So instead of changing the date, because I know everybody got used to Tuesdays, I'm going to post a pre-recorded video at 7 o'clock on the next 2 Tuesdays. So if you have any questions about third position or second position, please email me or send me a message on Facebook and let me know, or send me some comments here because I would love to address your questions in the next 2 videos. So I'm going to pre-record those and I'll be live again in 3 weeks on October 30th, right before Halloween. So who knows, maybe I'll do it dressed up in a Halloween costume. All right. Thank you, everybody. And if I'm having a lesson with you this week, I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.